This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you by Language Blend, the new best way to learn Spanish. Language Blend focuses on what you actually need to live and get by abroad with daily one-on-one lessons, a dedicated texting partner. It's like living in a Spanish-speaking country without ever leaving home. Go to languageblend.com for more information. Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. My guest today is Mauricio Lara. He's an attorney at law and tax lawyer based in Costa Rica. Mauricio, how's it going?
It's going well. Thanks for having me, Vance. Very excited to be part of your podcast.
Absolutely. I know we've been trying to put this together for a while, so I'm happy we finally made it happen because this is our first dedicated Costa Rica episode, which is well overdue.
Awesome.
Again, Mauricio is an attorney. He specializes in international tax law. So this is going to be a very, very value-packed episode. And we're going to talk about all the juicy topics, stuff that you'd probably have to pay a lot of money for a consultation to listen to. So we're going to make this as valuable as possible with the audience. So we might bounce around, but just as a preview, here's some of the topics we're going to talk about in this episode. Investor residency program, digital nomad visa, updated travel visas, the Costa Rican tax system, how to open a bank account for foreigners, forming companies in Costa Rica, fintech in Costa Rica, crypto, real estate investments, cost of living, birth tourism, Costa Rica. It's an ambitious agenda for this episode, but we'll try to get through as much as we can. Sound good?
Excellent. Let's do it.
All right. Where should we start? So, number one on the list was the new investor residency program. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Okay, so in 2022, Costa Rica had a new government that came into power. So this government has, this isn't even my motto, but the motto that they have established is that they don't want red tape. They want a red carpet for foreign investors. So all of their actions have been directed towards creating a more, I would say, investor friendly community in Costa Rica that can allow investors to easily invest in Costa Rica, and also provide those investors that are bringing that foreign investment into Costa Rica with additional tax benefits that can basically secure their decision in making Costa Rica their home, and also attract more foreign investment, which is actually a pivotal matter that this government is focusing on, so that they can attract more foreign investors into the country. So this law was one of the first laws that was passed in this new government. So it's basically an update to the existing investor residency program that was established in Costa Rica, where they have now lowered the minimum investment threshold, which used to be $200,000. They have
Mm-hmm.
now lowered that to $150,000, which
Ooh.
that allows a foreign investor to invest in either real estate, in companies or existing companies in Costa Rica. They can also invest in securities and bank deposits in Costa Rica,
Okay. So they could
which
do a
would
CD or,
exactly.
okay, that's
And
huge.
yeah, that's huge. There's actually different thresholds that you need to consider. So, based on the new investor residency program, you can invest $150,000 in real estate or in a business, or if you're setting up a security or a time deposit, that threshold is actually $60,000. except that that program isn't under the investor visa. It's under what is called the rentista
Right.
residency program,
So that's the one
which is
I've been
basically.
familiar with, and I think maybe
Mhm.
the audience will be a bit because I've tweeted about it in the past and stuff. So the 60K, sorry to interrupt, but yeah, so the 60K is the one I'm familiar with, which is the rentista, and now we're talking about the 150K one. I guess both are continuing to exist concurrently, and what would be the advantage of putting in the extra 90K? Do you have like a is it PR instead of TR? Is it a quicker path to citizenship or any or what would be the benefit?
Okay, so that's actually a very good question. So the investor residency is directed more towards people that want to invest in the country. So that's why it's directed towards either buying real estate or investing in a running business, or even setting up the investor's own business in Costa Rica. The rentista program is basically I mean, the rentista would basically translate to like fixed income. So it's actually people that have a fixed source of income that is not derived from Costa Rican sources, which under that perspective, they basically assess the minimum investment on what they have determined to be like the minimum income that this person should have when they come to Costa Rica,
Hmm.
which has been established at $2,500 per month. So that basically comes around very close to the $60,000 threshold,
Right.
where you can either have that in a bank deposit, where the bank will basically provide to the immigration authorities the proof that that person received the $60,000 in Costa Rica and is now spending like $2,000 per month. Or there's also other alternatives where, for example, if you have an investment portfolio outside of Costa Rica, you can get a letter from your portfolio manager or from your investment broker, where they can basically tell you that they're going to give you $2,500 per month, and that can also grant you the rentista investor residency.
And it's the same residence at the end of the day.
It is the those residencies are classified under what are called investor visas. So there's actually three categories under which you can qualify for the investor visa. So the first one would be the $150,000 investment in real estate or a business. The second one is the rentista, which has the option of either depositing the $60,000 with a local bank, or having this letter from an investment company or an
Uh-huh.
investment advisor that basically attests to the fact that you're going to be receiving at least $2,500 per month. And then the third
Right.
one is for retirees, where
Hmm.
they only need to show that they receive $800 per month, and that would also grant them the status as a retiree in Costa Rica.
Okay. Cool. Cool. And just one more time, if we had to, if someone had the question, hey Mauricio, should I send you guys 60K for the bank deposit thing,
Hmm.
or should I send you guys 150K to do the
Exactly.
investor thing? What are we telling them?
Yeah, that is also a very good question. So it's going to be mainly focused on what the intention of that person is. I mean, we've actually seen with a lot of digital nomads that perhaps they're moving around different countries, or they don't want to establish a base in Costa Rica yet. So basically this grants them the option to start to play around with the investor visa in Costa Rica, where they can start with perhaps with a residency program where they don't have to buy any real estate, they don't have to establish their own business. They can basically receive the same income that they're getting from sources outside of Costa Rica, and get
Hmm.
that path to their residency. Or I mean, something that we saw a lot back in 2021 and 2022, where people that were actually selling their homes, or they were moving away from their existing home bases, So if they're going to be investing in real estate, I mean, it just makes sense that if they're going to invest that money in Costa Rica, they can also get a path to residency without actually having to
Hmm.
have that deposit in place. So, I mean, if you're going to buy real estate in Costa Rica, I mean, I'm positive that you're probably going to spend more than $150,000. So
Right.
it just makes sense that you would also apply for the investor visa. Now, if you're not on that path of perhaps buying real estate or setting up your business in Costa Rica, we can use the same income that you're already receiving to basically provide to the government that you're receiving this income from abroad. And that can also lead to your path to residency in Costa Rica.
Okay. Cool. And I realize for the audience, I'm making a bit of assumptions that you guys know a little bit about how the Costa Rica programs works or how the 60K works. And honestly, I'd rather get to some more juicy stuff than just like rehash
Hmm.
some of those basics. Um, but I did have one follow-on question, Mauricio, on that, which is um, the payments into the caja. Maybe you could mention what that is, how people need to pay into the caja based on their, which is like the healthcare system based on their income. And I was wondering if, if someone's doing the 60K thing versus the 150K thing, if that could potentially have an impact on their how much they need to pay into their caja, and maybe there's a situation where they could actually pay less with the
Right.
larger with the larger amount because it's not considered, that it's not considered 2500 of monthly income or whatever.
That's actually a very good question that you're asking. So Costa Rica has a universal social security system where basically everyone in the country that's employed or self-employed is required to register with the Costa Rican Social Security Agency, which is commonly referred to as CAJA, because the full name is Caja Costarricense de Seguro Social. So that's basically like the social security agency that you would see in the US, except that in Costa Rica you have universal health coverage for medical attention, and also if you're employed, you also have a pension plan that you contribute to. So when you're a rentista resident, basically the income that you're going to have to declare to Caja and pay your social security dues are at a minimum on the 2,500 per month that you're going to be providing as evidence for your residency. Having said that, I mean, let's say, I mean, I'm gonna say this: with $2,500 per month, you're going to live very frugally in Costa Rica. So it's very likely that you're going to have income on top of that. But for the purpose of immigration, all you need to provide is that you have $2,500 per month.
Uh-huh.
So
And the
I mean
monthly
that would
payment on
also
that is like 200 and a bit, from what I heard.
exactly. Yeah, it's roughly like 10% of that income that you would pay to the Social Security Agency, which they would assess that as basically independent income that you're generating outside of the country. Now, with the investor visa, it's actually a very good question that you're asking, because when you invest funds into a company, you actually become a shareholder of that company. So the way that you get compensated for that investment is through dividends. So you wouldn't necessarily have to pay on the $150,000 investment, because basically what you would be receiving are dividends from whatever business the company engages in, or
Uh-huh.
whatever
Which is
income is
taxed
derived.
differently, so you'd probably pay less into caja.
It is taxed differently, and also there's no obligation for the company to distribute dividends. So
Mm.
there could certainly be a benefit in applying to the real estate option, just because that wouldn't necessarily be considered your personal income.
Oh shit! So really, you could actually avoid paying into caja entirely.
Yeah, completely. I mean, there is a requirement to register with Caja once you receive the resolution from the immigration service to get your residency. It's just that you can basically, I mean, get creative as to what your income will be based on that investment. Because at the end, I mean, you're investing in either real estate that if you're going to be living in that real estate, I mean, obviously, it's not going to be producing any income for you. And
Mm,
then if you have a business that is producing income, I mean, it won't necessarily have to be on the $150,000. I mean, you could invest the $150,000, but I don't know. I mean, if you're running an online business, that $150,000 wouldn't necessarily have to yield an a determined amount
got it. Got
of
it. Got it.
interest.
Got it. Yeah, obviously a lot of details there, but if I had to, um, if I had to put a synopsis on this, the Vance way, um, I've always considered the Costa Rica the con of the Costa Rica residency was the carrying cost of the residency was like, call it $2,500 a year, which would
Hmm.
be, which would be your payments into the caja under the rentista program. So if everyone's following me, right, you're receiving basically 30K a year in rentista payments, and then of that you're probably paying like 2,000 and a bit into the program. So, and the thing is that Costa Rica under that system wouldn't work well as a paper residency, because that you'd basically have to be paying like $2,000 a year to maintain the paper residency. And so that was kind of the con of that. But if you could just, buy a house or, invest in the stock market or something like that, that way you're not receiving the rentista income. And that way you're kind of getting around the payments into the caja. So you could potentially have a lower carrying cost to maintaining the residency through this new investor residency program.
Absolutely, yeah, and actually, there is a minimum payment that is established to Caja, eh, regardless of the status that you have. So
Okay.
that minimum payment is it's probably around $60 per month. So that wouldn't be a lot to have also.
Okay. So minimum carrying cost of the residency, $700 a year, let's call it.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Got it. Pretty cool. Hey guys, quick break from the episode to tell you about Bitrefill. Bitrefill allows you to shop online and in person without banks, converting your crypto directly into merchant balance. We're talking gift cards to Nike, Amazon, Apple, Airbnb, Hotels.com, and many more, all paid for with crypto. Bitrefill offers more than 10,000 gift card options in 180 countries, including the USA, Canada, all across Latin America, including Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, Argentina, El Salvador, and many more. You can also apply the code MyLatinLife at checkout to get 10% back on your first purchase. Go to bitrefill.com for more information. All right, let's move on to some other stuff. So, number two was digital nomad visa.
Okay, so this was a new program that it was also passed by this current administration. It had actually been proposed by the previous administration, but it had sort of like loomed over because the bylaws to that law hadn't been passed. So what one of the first executive decrees that the government issued was the bylaws to this digital nomad residency, which is basically like an expedited process that unfortunately does not lead to residency in Costa Rica, but it does grant a temporary permit, which is for 2 years, and it can be extended indefinitely for people that can prove that they have income from coming in from a company that is not established in Costa Rica. So they're able to file through the digital nomad program, which would basically allow a person that is working out of Costa Rica to have a 2 year permit that they can indefinitely renew. without having to go through the immigration process. Now, the setback of this option, as I mentioned before, is that it unfortunately does not lead to residency, but it certainly provides like a viable alternative for people that want to be legally within the country for an extended period beyond the tourist visa, and that can also allow them to continue to work in Costa Rica.
Okay. And at least prior to the pandemic, visa runs used to be totally chill in Costa Rica, and I think a lot of retirees were doing visa runs for like 10 years straight. Is that
Oh,
still
I have
i-
those clients.
is that still a thing, or are visa
That's
runs
still a
still
thing.
is so Costa Rica is still okay with that as long as you leave and re-enter?
Yes, but I do want to make a basically an update to what has happened. So Costa Rica previously had a maximum tourist visa of 90 days, and just in the past 2 weeks they have actually extended that to a maximum of 180 days, which is what you would normally see in the US and Europe.
Hmm.
So now you have the ability to stay up to 180 days current during your tourist visa.
Very cool. Is that for Canadians, Americans, Europeans, or?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a list of 40 different countries that can get this visa. Obviously, it includes the U.S., Canada, most of Europe. It also includes people that might have other nationalities, but they have a U.S. or Canadian visa.
Mhm.
So if that's the case, they can also get the up to 180 days.
That's huge. That's actually
Yeah.
awesome. That's very encouraging for Costa Rica as a country in general, because that means they're open to tourism, and that's huge. Moving from a,
I mean,
a 90 day to a
the
180.
lifeblood of Costa Rica since the early 90s has been tourism. So, I mean, we're very glad to see that the current administration is aligned with that the industry, and that they're also promoting the country for longer stays by tourists and investors, obviously.
Hmm. Okay, cool. And just to loop back around to the digital nomad visa, who would you recommend the digital nomad visa to if they could otherwise just do 180-day tourist visas and do visa runs on top of that?
Hmm. I mean, so what the law states is that if you're under a tourist visa, in theory, you're not allowed to work in Costa Rica because you entered as a tourist. Obviously, I mean, as you very well know, there are loopholes around that, and I can also attest to the fact that I have clients that have been living in Costa Rica for more than 10 years, and they've never filed for a residency, and they have their own businesses, and they run their company. So I would tell you that if you want a like a clear understanding of your legal standing in Costa Rica, then I would tell you go for the digital nomad visa or go for one of the investor visas. Now, I would also say that a lot of these people that came into the country before and have had that status for a long time. I mean, they were probably people that weren't thinking about the staying in Costa Rica, but then just I would say things started to happen, or they started to do business here, and they just started to stay. Eventually, those same clients that I've had, I mean, they perhaps married in Costa Rica, or they've had kids, so that also grants them a pathway to residency without having to go through the investor or the rentista programs. So, I mean, it's all very, I would say, a matter of
Hmm.
consequence, and like
Gotcha.
something particular to those individuals. But if you really want to be working in Costa Rica, you should apply for either the digital nomad or one of the investor programs.
Yeah,
But
got it, got
it's
it.
certainly an option to stay in that the gray zone where I mean, Costa Rica does not enforce like a very restrictive policy to immigration, especially with Americans and Europeans and Canadians, because they know that they usually visit the country as tourists, or they might have a business interest here in Costa Rica. So I mean, you won't see like police running up and down with like U.S. expats that they're trying to
Hmm.
get out of Costa Rica. So I mean, in that sense, I would tell you that immigration policy is more directed towards, I would say, like illegal immigration from some of our neighboring countries,
Hmm.
but not so much to U.S. or Canadian or
Got it.
European travelers.
Yeah, I think it's good for people who are remote workers for companies, and the companies sometimes want to see that you're above board, and you're you have a digital nomad visa. And so, how long does it take to get the digital nomad visa for Costa Rica? Like, what's the processing time looking like?
Okay, so because they launched this as an independent program from the traditional investor visas, they actually have an online website where all of the documents are filed, so that it's not necessary to physically appear before the immigration office, or to file documents with them. The process is taking probably between 3 and 4 months to be approved. So basically, once you submit the documents, it's going to take like 4 months to get the resolution from the immigration department.
Hmm.
But it's also very important to clarify that from the time that you file, you're already considered to be under a legal status in Costa Rica. So even if during that time you haven't received your approval, you are still allowed to be in the country, even if you run through the tourist visa period. This actually used to happen a lot with the previous tourist length that we have, which the maximum was 90 days. So usually investor visas take, I would say, between 6 and 7 months to be approved. So that actually led to a lot of people being sort of like legally in the country, because they had already filed for their immigration status, but
Hmm.
their tourist visa had already run out. So under those scenarios, it's already been ruled by the Constitutional Court, and the Immigration Department also attests to this, that
Hmm.
if you have from the moment that you file, you have already normalized your status in Costa Rica. So you are considered to be legally within the country, even if your tourist period expires.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's a great summary. Wow, this is definitely creating some options for people.
Excellent.
Um, most of my episodes, by the way, aren't super rapid fire, but uh, we're getting such good information out there for the people, so we appreciate you just blasting the information shotgun style for us. Um, okay. So Costa Rican tax system was the next one you had on your list, but before we do that, because I know that's a big one, you had kind of hinted at marriage visas and birth tourism, and I know that one was kind of saved for last, but actually rather get it in now. So tell us a little bit about birth tourism in Costa Rica and what that looks like.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I would say the term birth tourism mostly reflects just a person or a couple coming to Costa Rica to have their baby. But it's also very important to understand that you can get residency by basically linkage or family ties, which do not are not limited to just having your son or daughter being born in Costa Rica. So you can get residency in Costa Rica by marrying a Costa Rican, by marrying a Costa Rican resident that can also provide you with their residency status.
Hmm.
If your parents or grandparents, hey, are Costa Rican, you can also get the Costa Rican residency. And obviously, if you also have a child in Costa Rica, both parents and their grandparents can also receive a permanent residency,
Wow.
which you cannot get automatically through the investor visa. So
No
maybe going
way.
back to,
Dude,
yeah,
that's huge. That's huge.
I know.
I'm super excited. I don't think I've heard that. I don't think Twitter knows about that because Twitter thinks that the only countries where if you have a baby that the parents can get residency is Mexico and Brazil. That's the only
No,
ones
no.
Twitter knows about. So you're saying in Costa Rica, if I have a baby in Costa Rica, not only is the baby Costa Rican, but that both parents get permanent residency?
Both parents and the grandparents as well.
Wow. All
Yeah,
four.
all four.
Wow.
And their siblings as well, if they haven't been born in Costa Rica.
Wow. And the siblings of the kid. So let's say I have my first kid in Mexico or
In the
Brazil,
US, yeah, exactly.
and then we move to Costa Rica. That kid will get PR or citizenship. The
Correct.
first, okay, sweet. Okay.
Yeah, and perhaps going back to my comment on the investor residencies, so that there's basically two types of categories of residencies. So you have temporary residencies and permanent residencies. So actually, a residency by family ties gets you automatically the permanent residence. If you apply for the investor visa or the investor residency, you'll initially get a temporary residency that is going to be issued for 2 years. Then after 2 years, you can renew for 4 more years. But once you've had a temporary visa for 4 years, you can actually apply for the permanent residency.
Hmm.
So the one of the benefits of the family ties is that you basically skip the process of the temporary visa, and you can get the permanent residency from the get go.
Hmm. Okay. I have two questions about PR. Um, how permanent is permanent residency? Because in some countries they call it permanent, but you have to requalify or renew or whatever. So could you speak to what PR looks like in terms of, renewing every 5 years or something?
Yeah, so your permanent residency is renewed every 4 years. So at least every 4 years, you're going to have to apply for the renewal of that residency. Now, it's also very important to understand that if you have family ties to a Costa Rican, after 5 years of having your permanent residency, you can also apply for citizenship.
Hmm. Otherwise, it's 7.
Correct.
Okay, cool. And do you have to re-qualify? Like, if it was the investment, do you have to maintain the investment, or
No,
do you have to
once it
be there? Do you have to take your photos again? Kind of just like, what is the friction of renewing?
sure. No, that's actually a very good question. So let's say you start with the investor visa. You purchase real estate in Costa Rica and you applied under the $150,000 minimum investment. So you'll get your first residency for 2 years. Then the next time that you renew at the 2 years, you're going to get it for four. So that means that when you're at year four, since the time that you got your temporary visa with the investor visa, you can already apply for the change of status to permanent residency. What that means is that you no longer need to show that you've invested in the country, or that you keep that investment, because you're actually already become a permanent residency. And permanent residencies are in Costa Rica are issued under what is called a free of any conditions. So basically, you have no obligation to report to Caja, and you also have no obligation to provide that investment is being made in Costa Rica.
Okay. I'm still just stunned about the PR for the parents. That's definitely one of the biggest game changers I think we'll get from this episode. That's
Awesome.
really
Oh, there's a huge opportunity there. And I mean, at the end, we have first class healthcare systems here in Costa Rica. I mean, there's international hospitals that own hospitals here in Costa Rica. So, I mean, birth tourism, I think, is certainly going to be a very interesting option for a lot of couples that are looking into these paths to residency, and also having different nationalities.
mm. Do you know roughly how much it would cost to have a kid in Costa Rica, like all the hospital fees and so forth?
Well, I actually have three kids of my own, all of which I've had in a private hospital here in Costa Rica. So if it's a natural birth, so not a C-section, all the fees that you're going to pay is roughly like $1,800, which that includes like a one night stay at the hospital, and all like the services that they provide. And if you have a C-section, there's like other surgeons that they need to be paid and everything. So that option is going to be like $5,000. So it's either the natural birth, which is 1,800, or the C-section, which is 5,000.
Okay. Congrats, by the way, on three kids.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, that sounds like basically the same as Mexico in terms of pricing.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and that's out of pocket, obviously. Uh,
Well,
like I
I
would have
would
thought you
also.
would have had insurance, but obviously
Oh,
for an
no,
American or
but
Canadian.
no, but actually, let me tell you, I have an international insurance policy that covers me in Costa Rica, and that also includes the birth expenses. So I actually had to pay nothing out of pocket. I mean, there's a lot of international insurance companies that work in Costa Rica, and they also provide their products to expats. So, except that what you need to consider is that most policies have like a 9 month period where from the time that you acquire the policy up until those 9 months, basically you can't get pregnant because it wouldn't cover you. But
Right.
after that time has passed, the insurance company will cover everything. So I actually didn't have to pay anything of myself. And actually, all three of my kids were born through a C-section. So I mean, I did manage to save some money there.
Interesting. Okay, very cool. Very cool. And people can reach out to you if they want to coordinate um, birth tourism and obviously any of the other visas that we've talked about so far.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sweet. Well, that's one of the goals of this episode, obviously, for people listening. You guys can reach out to Mauricio for anything that we're talking about, and maybe mention my Latin life, you know. But definitely
For sure.
Mauricio comes highly recommended, and we've been in communication for probably over 6 months or a year at this point.
Yeah, probably a year now.
Yeah. Cool. So I think that more or less exhausts all the visas for now. So maybe we can move on to some tax, business, money stuff. How's that sound?
Excellent. I mean, that's the next stage, starting to plan for your retirement.
Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody. Quick break from the podcast to tell you about Language Blend, the best new way to learn Spanish. Language Blend was co founded by Jake Nomada, friend of the podcast, decade of experience in Latin America. And Jake and his team, they put everything into this program that they wish they had in terms of how to level up quickly with your Spanish language skills. Because the faster that you can get conversationally fluent in Spanish, the better the experience that you're going to have in Latin America. So go to languageblend.com for more information. Well, let's start with the Costa Rican tax system. You mentioned me offline. Costa Rica is a territorial tax system. Maybe you can mention first what that is, and then I know there was some back and forth where Costa Rica had was like proposing a law to switch it away from being a territorial tax system, and just kind of maybe you could comment on where that's at.
Absolutely. Okay, so at the time, Costa Rica continues to be a territorial tax system. Basically, what that means is that you are only taxed on your Costa Rican source income. So basically, any income that is derived from Costa Rican sources is, so let's say you're being paid by a Costa Rican company, or you have a business that is generating income in Costa Rica. You would basically be have the obligation to file for those taxes that you have received on that Costa Rican sourced income. Now, if you're receiving income from sources that are not derived from Costa Rica, let's say a company that is paying you from outside of Costa Rica, or you have investments that were made outside of Costa Rica, or you have rental property outside of Costa Rica, that income is not considered taxable in Costa Rica. So anything that you receive outside of Costa Rica, you have no obligation to report it in Costa Rica or pay any taxes in Costa Rica. So basically, tax systems across the world mainly are segregated into two categories. So there's basically territorial tax systems and global tax systems. I can tell you that probably 80% of the world operates under a global tax system, with certain caveats that need to be considered, where a lot of these countries have established what are known as treaties to prevent or offset double taxation, because those treaties are basically directed at preventing you having to pay taxes in two jurisdictions over the same income. So let's just take let's say Canada as an example. So if you're a Canadian citizen, you're living in Canada and you're getting income from a Costa Rican company, you're going to have to report that income to the Canadian tax authorities and pay taxes on that income. Now, if you're receiving that income in Costa Rica, it's very likely that you had to pay some taxes in Costa Rica. So basically, the Canadian authority will grant you basically a tax credit on whatever foreign income you already paid. A double taxation treaty would basically come into that scenario and provide you with a preferential tax rate on the income that you have derived from a source outside of Canada. So that, for example, if the Canadian income tax is 30%, then you would pay a fixed 15% on the income that you derive from Costa Rica. Now, as I mentioned before, Costa Rica continues to be a territorial tax system, so it does not have a lot of treaties to offset the double taxation. Costa Rica currently only has 4 treaties that they have signed. So one is with Mexico, the other one is with Spain. We have another one with Germany, and then the latest one that we've had is with the United Arab Emirates, and that was established actually because we've had some very recent investments from the UAE. So that's basically directed to offset any potential double taxation scenarios in that investment scenario.
Interesting. So, what would that mean if someone had a Dubai company?
That would be covered, correct?
Okay, sweet.
But
So, if
but
someone
you
could
you
live
also
in
need
Costa
to.
Rica, have a Dubai company, and they probably wouldn't owe anything in Costa Rica.
Yeah, but I would also tell you that the same would be true with the other jurisdictions, just given the nature of the territorial tax system that Costa Rica has. Where if, for example, if you have a Dubai company and you're getting income into that company, and then you're sending that income to Costa Rica, that is not considered to be taxable in Costa Rica. So maybe I'll provide more background, and also answer your question as to how Costa Rica has been approaching the matter of their territorial tax system.
Hmm.
So there's been a project of law in the Costa Rican Congress that has been in discussion since the early 2000s, where they want to transform Costa Rica to a global tax system, which that would also be in tune to Costa Rica's interest in basically forming part of the OECD, which is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Costa Rica is already a member of the OECD, but it has not changed its tax system to a global tax system. So there has also been no need for Costa Rica to move into approving other treaties to offset the double taxation, just because their tax system continues to be a territorial tax system.
So it continues to be territorial. And so is that
Yeah.
resolved, or are some laws like still working through the Congress?
I mean, I would say that there's always like a group of congressmen that take up this project, and they want to pass it, but so far it's been 23 years now, and they haven't passed it. So they haven't been too adamant on it.
So that's
But
reassuring.
even if that were to happen, and this would also go back to my comment on treaties to offset the double taxation. If Costa Rica does move to a global tax system, they will most certainly have to establish treaties to offset double taxation, which would then grant people that are residing in Costa Rica or living in Costa Rica a preferential tax rate, depending on where that income is sourced from. So also to give you like the another example of Canada. So let's say you're a Canadian citizen, you're living in Canada, and you're receiving income from Germany. So whatever income that you receive from any country in the world, while you're living in Canada, you're going to have to report and pay taxes on that income. Now, if that same person from Canada moves to Costa Rica, then they basically have no obligation to file any income that they're receiving outside of Canada. So that also creates a situation, and we've actually seen this a lot with expats that move to Costa Rica, where let's say this Canadian citizen moves to Costa Rica and he starts to receive that same income that he's received from Germany. He's going to pay zero taxes on that income, both in Canada and in Costa Rica. So that's actually one of those jurisdictional hedging opportunities where people can get a lot more revenue from their income without having to pay taxes on that same income that they're getting.
Mhm. And I think I had read a while back that even what they were trying to introduce for the OECD, they were going to make exceptions for foreign residents and retirees and stuff.
Yeah, that's correct. Actually, Costa Rica was already a part of the OECD when the new residency tax law program was passed last year. So I mean that's already in compliance with the OECD obligations and benchmarks.
Okay, cool. Uh, let's move on to bank accounts. How does it work opening a bank account as a foreign national in Costa Rica?
Okay, so Costa Rica, I would say, as opposed to other countries in Latin America, has a very unrestricted foreign exchange policy. So in Costa Rica, you're actually able to hold both local currency accounts, US dollars accounts, and euros accounts. So any person or company can hold any of those three, or even all three accounts in a bank account in Costa Rica. This you do not get this in countries like Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, or Argentina, where they do have very strict foreign currency controls, where you are only allowed to hold bank accounts in your local currency. So in that regard, Costa Rica is very open to foreign investment, because they are obviously are not forcing you to convert your foreign currency to local currency at exorbitant rates like you get sometimes in Mexico or Colombia, or even in Argentina now. So that's actually very beneficial for foreign investors, because they can continue to do business in their own currency. And it's actually very easy to also pay for major items here in Costa Rica with dollars, like real estate or car purchases, which can all be denominated in US dollars. Now, in terms of banking, there are certain restrictions to foreigners opening bank accounts. So one of the restrictions that they have is that a bank will only open an account for an individual if that person is current with their tourist visa extension. So let's say you come to Costa Rica today, you have your 180-day visa, or tourist visa, you're allowed to open a bank account during that period. So, for example, if you were to try to open that bank account after the 180 days were passed, the bank will tell you that they cannot open the account until you basically do your next visa run.
Yep, makes sense. So be current.
Yeah. Now, another alternative to having a personal bank account is forming a Costa Rican entity, whereby that entity is already considered to be a Costa Rican local entity. So you can basically open a bank account with a company, regardless of your immigration status or your residency status.
That's cool. So even if someone didn't have residency in Costa Rica, there's still a way to either have a bank account or something just to be able to, you know, uh, do your day to day banking in Costa Rica.
Absolutely. Yeah, and actually, Costa Rica has a national payment system that is run by the Costa Rican Central Bank, which is called SIMPE, which is basically the national electronic payment system. So, an issue that a lot of foreigners get into is that, for example, they'll come into Costa Rica as a tourist, they'll open their personal bank account, and then they'll try to do like bank to bank transfers, and they're not able to do those because they don't have a national ID that has been issued to them, which would be in the form either of the Costa Rican national ID or the DMEX, which is basically the document that is granted to residents in Costa Rica. If the person doesn't have either of those, then for sure I would recommend for that person to set up a Costa Rican company, because that company will have a local tax ID that will allow them to execute those transfers through the payment system.
Cool. So, talking about tax ID, that's actually a really big topic for foreigners, especially the Canadian and European, and basically anyone that's not American listening to
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Anyone that's not
America
American
is a
listening to this.
whole. Yeah, America is a whole podcast that we can do just on the U.S. taxes.
Right. So for Americans and Europeans, they might be interested in switching their tax residency to Costa Rica in order to exit the Canadian tax system, exit the European tax system. Could you speak to the process of getting that tax ID? And you probably have to get something like a certificate of tax, a tax resident certificate Certificado de Residente Fiscal. I'm not sure what
Yeah.
exactly they call it in Costa Rica. In order, to have that documentation.
Yeah, that's actually a very good question, and I mean, you've obviously, I mean, you obviously know a lot about the taxation and residency. A lot of people, when they think about residency, they're just thinking about like national IDs or residency in a country, but there's actually a whole other world that exists with regards to just tax residency in another country. I have already spoken about the residency process and how that process works, but it's amazing to see how easy it is to get a Costa Rican tax residency or like a tax residency certificate. So, for example, I had mentioned before that if you file for a residency in Costa Rica, if you're applying through the let's say the digital nomad, that might take 3 to 4 months. If you're
Mhm.
applying for one of the temporary residencies, that might take 7 months. So to get a tax certificate in Costa Rica, I can get that for you in 1 to 2 days. So I mean, it's basically just a document that is filed with the tax administration, where the foreign individual or even the foreign company applies for the tax ID in Costa Rica, and then that document is granted, and that also allows you to basically prove to foreign tax authorities that you have a tax residency in Costa Rica. Now, obviously, international tax authorities and different jurisdictions are more, I would say, uh, more aggressive in how they tax their individuals. So a lot of these tax laws and tax codes establish certain parameters that need to be considered in order for a person to validly prove that their tax residency has changed. So one of those main principles is that if the person continues to have their primary residency in the country. So let's just talk again about the example for Canada. Let's say you have your house in Canada, you live with your family there, and you want to get a tax certificate in Costa Rica. That process can be very easy to get. I mean, you're going to get that tax certificate in 1 or 2 days. The problem is going to be that if you continue to have your primary residency in Canada, the Canadian tax authorities will still continue to consider that your tax residency lies in Canada. Now, if you sold your house or you're planning to move, then that principle isn't met, and it's actually easier to prove to your foreign tax authority that you have actually effectively switched that
Right,
tax
right, right.
residency.
So let's assume our audience is smart enough to know that they need to reduce their ties in Canada, reduce their ties in Europe, you know, um, not receive money in Canada, give up their Canadian healthcare, give up their Canadian driver's license, sell or rent out their house on a long-term lease. We talk about that a lot. Um, but just the Costa Rica part of it. So let's just double down on how that's going to work. So that's I've never heard of the tax ID being so fast. So that's good in terms of, but that's getting the number. And then what about getting like a certificate saying that, stating that you're a tax resident? Is that same
That
day or does that
that
take
yeah,
longer?
it's no, it's when you're issued the tax number, you're also issued the certificate. So that's a document that we can procure for our clients as well, and
Wow.
that's issued in like I said, 1 or 2 days, because all the process is done electronically.
Wow. Because I can tell you in Paraguay, you can get the tax ID number, uh, and then the certificate takes like another month.
Yeah, no, it's super fast in Costa Rica.
Huh. Okay. Cool. And so, what do people need? What are the prerequisites to get the tax ID? They have to be a resident.
No, they actually don't need to be a resident. So a tourist during their tourist visa stay can apply for the tax residency, and we can procure that for them in 1 or 2 days.
No way. Wait,
Yeah,
what? Wait, what? So you could be on a tourist visa and get
yeah,
a tax ID
absolutely,
and get a certificate of fiscal residence?
absolutely.
Holy shit, that's a game changer. I might need to edit that out. That's too good of information. No, I'm joking. I'm going to leave it in because I love you guys. Wow. Okay. Could you speak to that a little bit more?
Absolutely. So it's basically a process where the person that is doing their tourist visa in Costa Rica applies for the tax ID, and once they apply for it, they also get a certificate where now their tax residency is considered to be in Costa Rica. Now, it's also very important to consider that when you apply to the tax residency, you also take the obligation to abide to Costa Rican tax laws. But that also means that you're going to be ruled by the territorial tax system. So any income that you receive from abroad, you don't even need to report in Costa Rica. So let's say you're getting $100,000 from Canada. You're now a Costa Rican tax resident, so you're basically paying zero taxes in Costa Rica and zero taxes in Canada.
Hey guys, quick interruption to tell you about Bitrefill. Bitrefill is the best way to convert your crypto into gift card balances. These are gift cards that you can spend at hotels.com, Airbnb, Nike, and many more. You may remember Joel Valenzuela, previous podcast guest. He's been living on crypto exclusively since 2015, and he's a big consumer of Bitrefill. And so I asked Joel, I said, what do you like most about Bitrefill? He said that he likes the instant delivery, the precise amounts so that you don't have to juggle a lot of gift cards, and he loves the global selection. Nobody else has this much selection of gift cards, over 10,000 gift card options across hundreds of countries. Go to bitrefill.com to sign up, and you can also use the code MyLatinLife for 10% back off your first purchase. Go to bitrefill.com for more information. Damn, what was I going to say on this? What does reporting look like though? Like in other countries, you still have to report. You're just reporting a lot of zeros. Like, are you reporting monthly? Are you reporting quarterly, annually?
Right. So you report once a year. So the Costa Rican tax year runs from January 1st through December 31st. It used to be different, but this was changed in 2019. So before, the tax year ran from October 1st through September 30th, but they have now changed it to basically comply with what most of the world follows, where you now have a tax year that runs from January 1st through December 31st. You'll file for income tax once a year. And then if you have an activity that is subject to Costa Rican value added tax, which Costa Rica did pass a value added tax in 2019, which now levies the sale of goods and services, you would have to file the VAT return every month.
Okay, so it's a couple different forms that you might have to fill out.
Yeah, but also remember that let's just go back to the example of let's say a remote worker, or that works for online, or is getting income from a source that is not Costa Rican. Basically, you have no VAT tax obligations because you're not selling goods or services in Costa Rica. So you basically wouldn't have to report or register as a payer of the VAT tax,
Hmm.
and you would basically just file an annual tax return where you would only declare in that filing any Costa Rican sourced income. So any income that you receive from abroad, you are not obligated to report in that income statement. Now, let's say if you have a rental property in Costa Rica, or you're deriving income from other Costa Rican sources, or you have employment in Costa Rica, those you do need to report on that annual income statement.
Okay, got it. And I assume people need to show up in person to get the tax ID. Do they have to show up in San Jose and go to, a government office?
Okay, so um, I mean, there's basically two ways to do that. You can do it yourself, obviously, and you can go to the tax authority with your passport, and you can apply for it. Or what is customarily and what a lot of expats prefer is that they'll grant a power of attorney to either their attorney or their accountant
Hmm.
for that individual to file that petition for them. So that actually it works very well for a lot of people here in Costa Rica, because usually a lot of expats they don't come to downtown San Jose, or they don't go to like the major cities. They mainly stay like in the
Hmm.
coastal areas, or in like the more tourist areas.
Right.
So those tourist areas are usually further away from the tax authorities, different offices that they have across the country. So they usually prefer to grant this power of attorney to either their attorney or
Yeah.
their
Yeah,
accountant,
of
or
course. That's
someone
good.
they know, and then that person processes the request for them. And that basically means that they don't have to visit a government office at all.
Do you have to be do the individual have to be in the country and like maybe send their passport or send a copy of the passport with the stamps? Or could I power of attorney you right now and you could just submit for me even though I'm not in Costa Rica and you could literally get a tax ID without even having visited the
That
country?
That's perfectly possible, and I must also add that we've done that for clients as well, where they haven't even been in the country, and they have granted us the power of attorney, and we have filed that request for them. So
Oh,
the tax authority that does not basically validate or review the 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 tourist visa of the individual. They basically just require the name that is stated on the passport. So they don't even go into validating their status in Costa Rica, or if they came in or out of Costa Rica.
wow. I really hope the listeners appreciate how juicy of information this is. This is unreal. Yeah, you're honestly completely changing my opinion on Costa Rica as a valid option within Latin America.
Well, I'm very glad to hear that.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. This is huge. Wow. Amazing. I almost feel like we should not even I don't even want to ask any more questions about that because it's already too good. It's already too good. And you guys just need to hit up Mauricio and mention my Latin life so I can maybe get a little tiny commission. But yeah, huge, Mauricio, huge. Okay. One or, we'll be respectful of your time. One or two last things. I know we wanted to talk about crypto. Could you give us your spiel on owning crypto, using crypto in Costa Rica, etc.?
Absolutely. So, I mean, out of my international tax practice, I was actually introduced to Bitcoin in 2013. So, I've experienced Bitcoin for some time now. I actually advise crypto companies that have been established in Costa Rica, or have launched their own blockchains out of Costa Rica. So it's actually been very interesting to see the huge growth that we've seen in Costa Rica in terms of the use of cryptocurrencies. I mean, there's a very popular movement that has been created in Costa Rica that is called the Bitcoin Jungle. This was a project that started in Uita in Costa Rica, which is very close to Dominical. So they've actually created a whole ecosystem of crypto, where it's mostly based with Bitcoin, where they have set up payment rails for individuals and businesses here in Costa Rica to receive crypto. There's actually a very good Canadian company that is established in Costa Rica that's called Bull Bitcoin. They have created a wallet that now enables people to pay on local payment rails in Costa Rica using their Bitcoin. So there's been a lot of growth and adoption of cryptocurrencies in Costa Rica, and for sure it's a very expedite way to spend your money here in Costa Rica and to use the cryptocurrencies that people have. I've also assisted a lot of clients, particularly in 2021 and 2022, in basically being able to purchase real estate with the crypto holdings that they have, because a lot of the issues that they were running into is that they were basically crypto millionaires and people that had gotten into crypto very early, and they wanted to invest and purchase real estate in Costa Rica, but they ran into the problem that a lot of the sellers that they were trying to buy from, it wouldn't take their current cryptocurrency. So we are very familiar and have assisted a lot of clients in converting that crypto to local payment rails to be able to pay for those purchases in Costa Rica, or even make those payments to the sellers in the US or in Canada, where they can basically make use of that crypto that they have for these traditional purchases of real estate, or vehicles, or even luxury items.
Awesome. Awesome. So sounds like Costa Rica overall crypto friendly country.
Yes, definitely.
Amazing. Maybe the last thing to touch on would be cost of living in Costa Rica. I think most people know Costa Rica is pretty expensive, but maybe you could give some numbers, like what would a single guy need, what would a family of four need,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah, I'm sure you did it on purpose to leave this for the end. Well, I mean, as a remote worker and having lived in multiple countries in Latin America, that for sure Costa Rica is not the cheapest country in Latin America. Eh, I mean, I have to attest to that myself, and I believe that we've also experienced a similar situation as Mexico has had, where our currency has also eh, increased in value with respect to the dollar. So it has increased in the last year, probably like 30% with regards to the previous year. So that obviously makes it even more expensive. Uh, I would say that even though Costa Rica is it's probably not close to being the least expensive country in Latin America, it does have several benefits to it. I mean, one I would say is the political stability that we have had. Definitely with regards to the rest of Central America, but also with regards to other Latin American countries. I mean, I'm sure you followed what happened in Colombia with this incumbent party that is considered to be like a more left wing. The same happened in Peru, and the same happened in Chile. I mean, it's happened the same in Argentina, and now they're trying to shift to like a far right option now with Milei. So I would say that I mean, definitely Costa Rica's biggest selling point is not that it's affordable to live here, but I can say that the affordability is offset by the political stability and the safety that you feel in Costa Rica. So I mean, in that regard, I can definitely attest to the fact that we're not the cheapest country in Latin America, but you do find like a good standard of living here in Costa Rica.
Mhm.
I would say that for a single guy living in one of the coastal areas, I would say that at a minimum, I mean, they would have to make at least $3,500 per month, which that would certainly include like a rental of a very nice condo or house that would also include their living expenses, and also like some fun and games.
Okay. And then for a family of four, what would you recommend?
I would say, I mean, at least, I mean, considering like tuition for private schools and everything, I would say at least 8,000 per month.
Okay. What does it cost to rent just like a three-bedroom house?
So that's going to vary greatly based on location, but I can tell you that like, let's say in the neighborhood where I live in, and where our offices are located, which is in Escazú, which is like a suburb just west of downtown San Jose. I mean, you can easily rent a house, a three-bedroom house, like a modern house, for, I would say, $1,500 $1,800 per month.
Yeah. Cool. That's not too bad. So we're looking at like comparable to, prices where people are coming from, but you get the added benefits of just these enormous tax benefits, which
Exactly.
which more than outweigh any like small cost of living variation.
Well, I mean, let's just take the example of Canada. Let's say you're making $80,000 per year. You're currently being taxed probably north of 30% per year. I mean, by just moving to Costa Rica, you're already saving that 30% because you're basically paying zero taxes in Canada and zero taxes in Costa Rica over the same income.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. Um, Amazing. Anything else that you wanted to mention? We'll get to the shout outs and all that in a second, but anything regarding what we've talked about so far where you wanted to add an additional asterisk, or you wanted to elaborate on anything, or you think we did a good job of covering the bases?
Well, I think, yeah, for sure, we've covered a lot of the topics that we discussed. Um, I mean, obviously, I mean, for sure, I'm sure that there's going to be some follow-up questions or comments, and I'm open to a new podcast on like more specifics, so that we can expand on those items for sure.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely be a lot of ways to collaborate in the future. Especially as, like I said, you've definitely opened my eyes to how business friendly Costa Rica can be, and how it's really a much better option for digital nomads, expats, and retirees than I had originally anticipated. So, thank you so much, Mauricio, for coming on and telling us more about Costa Rica.
No, you're welcome. It's been a pleasure to be a part of this podcast, and hopefully we can do more in the future.
Absolutely. So, take as much time as you want right now and tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Absolutely. So you can find me on Twitter. So my handle is Mauricio Lara R. You can also email me at mauricio at laralegalcorp.com. And you can also find our website at www.laralegalcorp.com.
Amazing. Well, all the links will be in the show notes as well to your Twitter and other ways people can get in touch. Um, Again, this has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. My guest, Mauricio Lara, attorney at law based in Costa Rica.
You're welcome, Vance, and hopefully we'll do this again.